What's up, everyone? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic.
And I'm Jammin John.
And we have an album review for you. So, we are not done covering all the stuff that came out on February the 7th. We wanted to cover a lot of it, and, well, we're doing it. So this time we are reviewing the new album from Sylosis, Cycle of Suffering. This also came out on the 7th, like we said, on Nuclear Blast, and this is the band's 5th full-length album. They've been around since 2000, and they're kind of a mix of thrash metal, melodic death metal, and I'd say metalcore. Frontman Josh Middleton on this is also the producer and mixer. He's also a member of Architects at this point, since 2017, and this album also features Connor Marshall of Conjurer on bass, whom we've seen Conjurer twice, and we know that dude's a solid bassist.
Yes.
And a fucking maniac.
Yes.
So, the album starts off with Empty Prophets, and I gotta say, I like the fill and Into the Blast thing that kind of opens it up. It's very much kind of like a thrashy gallop. Production on this is really solid. It's very polished.
Yeah, it's very clear sounding.
Yeah. Good chunky guitar tone. Tons of solos. It has a nice kind of gallop, and you're going to get used to that on this album. Actually, I think the next song, I Sever, which I believe was the first single on this, should have been the opener. It starts off with that stereotypical acoustic intro before just exploding into thrash metal, which, well, we learned that one from Metallica years and years and years ago, and it's still pretty damn effective. But this is a really solid song.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, just flip those two, I think it might start off a little bit better here. Vocally, this band is super close to who we're listening to right now, Revocation. This guy sounds a lot like Dave Davidson.
Yes.
Musically, it definitely has that kind of balance between thrash metal, metalcore, and melodic death. Mostly metalcore and thrash metal, though. Honestly, like, this is a kind of band that would probably appeal to people who love Megadeth, but also people who love, like, Parkway Drive or something of that ilk. It's very similar to that.
Trivium,
definitely Trivium. Especially the earlier Trivium stuff when it was still very growly. Now, I Sever gets kind of epic towards the end of it, which I really thought was kind of cool. It builds up into this really cool point, but on this part, it really doesn't get vocally epic to really match the tone of the music.
Correct.
Which I thought was, I mean, maybe a choice for the vocalist because he doesn't feel he has that register in his voice to really do that. But you get kind of surprised later on, namely with the last track, that, oh yeah, he can sing, he just didn't here, which I was like, I kind of wondered why.
if he thought it took away from the overall brutality of the album not to sing in parts or be more epic.
I mean, and it wasn't as though this album is necessarily like the most brutal thing out there.
Because it's not.
It's not. It really has moments that spots of melody really work, and melodic vocals probably would have made them a little bit stronger. Now, one of the issues here, and it's going to be kind of an issue even bringing up individual tracks, is because a lot of them blend together.
Yes.
That is the main issue here. Like, I have a couple of standout tracks, but some of these tracks are indistinguishable between other tracks here.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked Nvidia. I thought that one kind of brought the pace a little bit more and had some real memorable melodies on it. But another thing on this album that seems to happen too much is when they're going to go into a big epic bridge or whatever, they abruptly stop what they're doing.
Yeah.
And it just derails the song. Like, dude, come on, man.
Like, there's lead work, per se. It doesn't last long at all. We're talking about maybe a measure or two where where it sounds like it's going to go into a really neat lead, and then it just...
Yep, right into the next section.
Yeah, just right there, and it happens in almost all the songs.
The leads are good, but they are very short.
There's like one part where it's got like a harmonic section. It's actually back in the first song again. It's got a kind of a cool thing where it could go into a really well harmonized solo, but again they stop.
Yeah, and that is kind of an issue here because there's other moments where they just abruptly stop to go into this epic build-up, and you kind of get tired of this particular dynamic.
Yeah.
And that's kind of an issue on this album because a lot of the stuff is repeated. Like, you hear the same structure in, like, I would say 80% of the songs on here. It really doesn't deviate. It pretty much just locks itself into cruise control very early on in the album.
Like the song Devils in Their Eyes had some kind of cool riffs, but that was about it.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of moments in terms of like the structure of the song you can bring up because it's similar to just about every other track on here.
Yeah, like if this was an album that had no breaks in between the tracks, you'd think it was just one 50-minute song. Well, honestly, 45-minute song, because the end track is a little bit different.
And like one of my main issues here is it just kind of sounds like they kind of just dialed it in, and this sounds like stuff to solo over, yet they don't do a lot of solos.
Right.
Or at least they don't do very long ones that really scream like, oh, this is the big grandiose moment. It's just...
It's like they went to their safe space. They went to their safe space and they stayed there because they knew they could do it. But I mean, there's no like progression at all. Even to have a newer sound, it's 2020. Like you'd think you'd want to bring forth something new instead of the stagnant metalcore from the 2000s era.
And like you can do metalcore and make it interesting. I mean, there are plenty of good metalcore bands out there right now that write really interesting dynamic stuff. This album plateaued somewhere around like the third track, really.
Yeah.
I mean, a couple of moments that kind of piqued my interest, but then that didn't last. Apex of Disdain, I thought was a little bit darker, a little bit heavier, but it followed still strictly to that same formula that is on just about every single track on here.
Yeah, while it had a darker sound and tone to it, it had the same song structure, almost to a T of the other songs before it. And that's just not something that speaks to me, I guess we'll say, you know?
A couple of cool moments, like Arms Like a Noose has a kind of an interesting breakdown that definitely reminded me a lot of Lamb of God. But again, the song is interchangeable with a lot of the others, and that was a big issue. And in the song Devil in Their Eyes, the breakdown in there really reminded me of Jaws. It just, a lot of this just, I don't know, it just doesn't really work. Like, it just feels written for the sake of writing an album. Like there doesn't seem to be a tremendous amount of passion or creativity behind it.
Like I listened to the album 3 or 4 times,
Same
and to really try and give it a day in court as to maybe I was missing something. But the problem with every time I listened to it was it became background noise. Like I stopped paying attention. Went about the house and did other things while it was on, and it didn't keep my attention, which makes it really tough to point out strong points when they're so lost that you don't see it.
And then you get to the last track, Abandon, which sounds like it was written by a completely different band. This one is odd. Namely, all right, first off, clean vocals. And I kind of wondered where the hell these were in other spots on the album. They could have actually made some choruses really stand out.
Right, you could have added some more dynamic to the rest of the album.
And stylistically, this one is massively different. This actually sounds like a mix between Killswitch Engage and Catatonia. It's wildly different, and I just kind of wonder, like, all right, there was definitely some creative stuff going on here. Where was on the rest of the album? Because it shows up in spots. There are definitely some clever riffs on here, but it's just paced in such a way where it just kind of just falls in this blender. But I was glad they broke the formula at least on the last track, because it was at least a surprise, and I kind of needed some surprises at this point to really hold my interest. But it wasn't until the last track.
And I guess if you're going to close an album that way, it may lead to, in the future for records, a different avenue to take. So, I mean, leaving on that note wasn't terrible, but again, having it be the only track in the album with any variance from the others, just, you don't want to do that to an album. You don't want to put a banger in the beginning like I Sever and then close with something unique and have just a bunch of filler in between.
That could have been something like nice in the middle of the album to break up the monotony, because there was some monotony. And like, this music is energetic and fast and chuggy. It should be fun and should be like, give you goosebumps, but it really just became a chore to listen to, and that's really sad because I like this band. I have all their releases, and these guys can definitely write and definitely play. This album is definitely not as good as previous albums.
Agreed.
At least in my opinion.
Agreed.
So overall, I'm going to give it 2.5 stars. Again, I like this band, but this album just feels uninspired, dialed in, and fiercely repetitive. And overly long, too. It's over 50 minutes long, and that's just too long for music that is decidedly entirely too similar from track to track. But there are some really good songs in here, and I still recommend you guys check it out. Just form your own opinion on it, but yeah, I wasn't a huge fan.
I'm going to give it 2.5 as well. An album should never lose your interest that quickly. and there shouldn't be, especially in this day and age for music, there just shouldn't be, just an album full of filler that doesn't hold your attention. Again, and like Nick said, there are some decent songs on here, and I do like this band too. I've been a fan of them since they came out. I was really surprised when I saw this on the releases. I thought, shit, I haven't seen these guys in forever. But I mean, in my opinion, I'd say do a little bit better than that. So, 2.5.
So, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe. Because if you subscribe, you are also entered in our giveaway for a Cryptopsy Hoodie. We're going to be giving it away once we hit 1,000 subs, so...
And we're almost there.
And
again, thank you very much for everyone that has subscribed thus far. We appreciate it. We love you guys.
Yeah, dude, thank you so much, man. You guys make this worthwhile.
For sure. So with that in mind, we are going to bid you a fond adieu. You guys take care.